Okay. Got it. Who did that? All right. Our speaker tonight, I hope he gets off to a better start than I did. Anyhow, our speaker tonight is a good friend. I've known him and his wife, for several years now. We've had him here for, on several different occasions. And, I know he's a solid member of Alcoholics Anonymous. He does a lot of service work, has through the years. Seen Bill and Kay, seen him at a lot of conferences, the conventions, and so forth. And, he and I have had some conversation one-on-one. I always appreciate what he had to share. And the old boy's got a lot of wisdom, and he's got a good AA talk as well. And I'm just, glad to have known him over the years. So if you would help me welcome Bill C. from Greensboro.
Steve, thank you for those kind words, and I'm grateful to be invited back. It seems like I get here about once a year, and that's pretty nice to be invited back, because you hear so many people say this, and it's true with me. There wasn't a lot of places that I was welcome a number of years ago. Certainly not welcome back after they'd had a taste of me. And I'm talking about some pretty low places, too. My name is Bill Crawford, and I'm an alcoholic. Amen. And sometimes it's just the thoughts about what we celebrate and treat and do something about in places like this. Sometimes the thoughts are keener. I'm more sensitive to what we're saying when we say I'm an alcoholic. If you've been around here any time at all and have had any, as the psychologists call, insight about your condition, you know that I'm not saying I just was careless about my drinking. That I'm saying that I suffered from a condition and still have that condition that is deadly, insidious, and is as bad as any disease, condition, health problem, whatever, as anybody can imagine. I'm saying that I'm here in an unnatural state and have been for a lot of years. I'm here sober and not even about to drink. I'm here sober for a long time since I've had a drink. And when someone like me admits to and owns up to the fact that it's impossible for me, of myself, of my own volition, my power, to not drink, it's a big deal. And I talk about the gift of desire. It's the one requirement for membership in this outfit is desire to stop drinking. And it's something you can't give to people, isn't it? It's something that I would love to give to a lot of people, especially people who've been dear to me, especially people in my own family, especially people that mean something special to me. If I could just give it to it, impose it on them, teach it, explain it, or whatever, it can't be done. So if it had to do with deserving, if it had to do with being smart, if it had to do with character or anything, I wouldn't have gotten that gift. I cannot explain why I was given the gift of desire when I had nothing going for me, nothing tangible, nothing that you could put your finger on. And so many people who seem to be smarter, with more to lose, with better things going for them, have not received that gift. And I can't explain that. I can only be as grateful as I'm capable of being. So what I'm saying is that this is a big deal. Alcoholism is a big deal, and what we do here is a big deal. Somehow I've been thinking about Melvin Hawkins lately. Melvin Hawkins. I don't know, Tom, do you remember Melvin Hawkins? Wherever Tom is. Tom's still in the room. You remember? Melvin was from Danville, and I got sober in Greensboro, and been to other places, but and back in Greensboro. And that was when we had a lot of speaker meetings. It seemed more speaker meetings than anything else, and we just sort of traded off speakers. And I got to know Melvin pretty well. It wasn't that far from Greensboro to Danville, and he would even visit my home group on Saturday nights. At that time, it was the Star Mountain group. And Melvin never made a talk. He never shared his experience from a podium. He didn't tell about his relationship with shrimp. His favorite food was shrimp. And one night, one evening, he and his wife Kitty were having a dinner party or something, and they were having shrimp cocktails, and he reached in the refrigerator because he just couldn't wait to get one of the shrimp. And he ate the shrimp, and he got pretty sick. Pretty doggone sick. So sick that he couldn't enjoy the dinner party. He couldn't share in the meal. And so he said, I must have gotten hold of a bad shrimp. And then an occasion came up sometime later, or 2 weeks later, a month later, 6 weeks later, where he ate shrimp again and he almost died. Rushed to the hospital. Tubes in him, brought him back to life. And the doctor said, somehow you've lost your tolerance to shellfish. If you eat shellfish again, you're going to die, because we barely brought you back to life. His favorite food. From that day on, and Melvin lived a long time after, but Melvin never ate another shrimp. He never said, I'm going to try a different kind of shrimp. I'm only going to eat shrimp on weekends. I'll eat shrimp with a different crowd. Never occurred to him. If he came to your house before he dipped his chip in the dip, he was going to make sure there were no shellfish in that dip. On the other hand, when I was doing the thing that I retired from, when I was working for the company and my function was to do the follow-up program with the alcoholic or otherwise addicted people, a person came into my program, into one of my groups, that had just come out of the hospital. Now, all of us lose tolerance if we drink long enough to alcohol. But this was a special case. When this man drank, it was code blue. And when he came into my group, he told us, the group, in detail how it was very close to death, and they brought him back to life, almost miraculously. That his deal was, his physiology or whatever, when he took a drink, it wasn't just like I took a drink and the tolerance and the allergy manifested itself. The toxicity was so great with this fellow, it almost killed him. And the doctor told him, if you ever drink again, it will kill you. And he drank again. So there's a difference in what I have and an allergy to shrimp. There's a difference in what I have than being sensitive to poison ivy or something. I've got a condition that will kill me if I drink. And I've got a mentality, a mind that will demand that I do drink. So I know that what being powerless over alcohol means. I know of myself. Any kind of will, any kind of strength within me to not drink would go out the window when it was time to drink. I came up in a home with a dual problem. We had alcoholism and Southern Baptism right there in the same home. And I know that is not unique with me. And what that meant was every view, everything that I knew about beverage alcohol was negative. What happened in my home because of my father's alcoholism, it was not pleasant. I didn't have a favorable view of drinking. And what I learned in the Baptist church, my mother taught the Crawford Bible class, a group of women all of her life. What I heard from her and in that church was negative too. I had every reason not to drink. but I got into peer pressure. Now, I say this every time I talk. I was having trouble long before alcohol came on the horizon. Alcohol was the solution for me in the beginning. You know, in our book where Bill says one of the symptoms of our progression is to seek lower companions. I was doing that in the second grade. Now, not consciously, but I know in retrospect that's what I was doing. I came along before they had diagnoses like ADD, ADHD. I've got a grandson who's been diagnosed with ADD, you know, and they're ADHD. I never heard that when I was a kid, but I was probably one of those, or maybe several of those. I don't know. I came along before Ritalin. I came along during paddling, which was the treatment of choice at that time. And if I had to put, I couldn't put two and two together real early. I couldn't equate what I did with the punishment. That lasted a long, long time, not just when I was a kid, to know that if I do this, it's that price attached to it. I had trouble with that. And so as I got older and lower companions became more my group, I began to smoke Lucky Strikes and learned how to inhale and hang around with the other cats, and I began to drink. Now, I didn't all of a sudden think that alcohol was all right. Peer pressure said to me that it's more important to be included with them, doing what to be accepted by them, or the need for that became greater than my fear of beverage alcohol. And so I began to drink. And a lot of people don't understand social drinking. I was a social drinker for a while, about 6 weeks, as best I can remember. And I tell you what ended my social drinking. I drank enough cheap wine one night at age 15 and a half years old to feel it. Now, I'd had a half a can of this and a swallow of that before. But this night, I got enough in me to know what we know as intoxication. And what happened to me is what happens to just a percentage of people who experiment with alcohol. Doesn't happen to most people. Will not ever happen to my wife. You know that feeling you get when you get that buzz? She hates that feeling. I relied on that feeling. She says the reason is because when I feel that feeling, she tells me, I don't like it. I feel like I'm losing control. The only semblance of control I ever had was the same stuff, the same feeling. The only thing that made me feel wrapped at all was the same stuff that makes her feel that she's losing control. And so when this happens, or to put it another way, alcohol has to do something for you to ever have any trouble with it. The experts say that just 10% of people who experiment with alcohol get that special thing from it and will, in time, cause problems. Or the way I like to put it, 9 in 10 waste every drop they drink. And we all know them. They're that 9 in 10 that leave a half a glass of something somewhere because they forget to drink or they switch to coffee. You ever been with people that switch to coffee? I've had a couple of drinks down now. I think I'll drink coffee. That's crazy stuff. Crazy stuff that ought to be researched and dealt with, but nobody ever does that. They study us, don't they? They don't study them. And there's more of them. My progression is like yours. I think sometimes, particularly when we're new and we come and hear stories particularly from old geezers like me, and we'll hear things like things that occur as we go through the progression of alcoholism that really don't have anything to do with whether alcoholism exists or not. It's whether somebody goes to jail a lot or somebody loses their business or family, because somebody, it's a DUI contest in this outfit. I've had more DUIs than anybody. Some people get no DUIs. What happens, I think, is what happens on that inside. What happens that as we develop this condition and as it turns on us is so similar. I don't care if you've had 50 DUIs or you've had none, or whether your liver fell out or you're healthy as a horse physically and in so many ways. The similarities are so great. One of the things is that in sobriety, as we meet and we talk about our fears and feelings and this kind of thing, we discover that we have a mutual understanding that I can't even have with my wife, and I've been married to her for a lot of years. Because the things that happen in here, the things that drive me and others to my knees are not so much the things that, superficial things that happen, as those things that I cannot live inside this skin anymore. In the beginning, alcohol has to do something for you, and it did something special for me. I've tried to describe that. I love Dr. Silkworth's chapter, The Doctor's Opinion, where he talks about the things that he observed in Directing Towns Hospital, where he treated thousands of us, and he observed certain commonality among us. And he said, these people drink, I don't care why they say they drink. They like a good martini or a cold beer when they go in the yard. They drink because they like the effects, is what he said. It's as simple as that. And because even though it's injurious, even though it hurts them, and everybody knows that it hurts them, even they know it hurts them, they cannot resist that sense of ease and comfort. And the only thing they ever gave me, ease and comfort, was that very thing. And he talked about allergy. He said, can't explain it. But these guys and gals seem to have a physical sensitivity, an allergy to this stuff that most people don't have. And when they drink, they react in a way that, it's like when they have one drink, they can't stop. He called it a phenomenon of craving. I knew that early in my drinking. I knew in my teens, if I could only get a drink or two, I better stay away from it. Because even if I wanted to drink pretty badly, that a drink or two would be worse. I would be more agitated, more uncomfortable, more craving than to have a drink at all. And he said, I can't explain it, but these people relate to alcohol in that way. And most people don't. He also observed some other things, and he categorized different kinds of alcoholics by his observation. And most of us can fit ourselves into some of these slots that he talked about. But I just know when I look back that my drinking was different, even from some of those guys that I was running with that were, just doing all the crazy things that I was doing, puking with me and bragging about how much they had to drink in all those high school young days. Those events, those things that happened to us, if you were like me, those times when you're young and you brag about the amount that you had. I don't know if you remember that or not, but you drink 4 or 5 beers and tell everybody the next day you had a dozen. I drank 12 beers. That changes, doesn't it? You end up telling that cop you've had 2 when you've had 40, that kind of thing. But in the beginning, it seemed to be sort of a mark of manhood to consume a lot. And the guilt and fear never left me. It was always there. I knew this is wrong. This is wrong. I don't want to end up like my daddy. I don't want to be that thing that makes the family insecure. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't want to humiliate myself. I want to grow up and be rich and famous, like all young people want, I guess. And I tell myself that lie when I get older, when I've settled down, when marriage comes along or whatever, when a career begins. I'm not going to do this anymore. And everybody in this room knows that I was going to do it not only more, I was going to change to this was going to be the center of my life. Because the more I drank, the more I depended on what alcohol did for me. Now, alcohol pretty much never failed me. You know, there were some prices, embarrassment, humiliation, right? Much vomiting through the training years, this kind of thing, but that didn't separate me from my bunch. My whole bunch were puking. You know, it was, nobody said, you getting sick on your stomach, you must be different from us. My crowd were puking. My crowd were getting in trouble. My crowd was fighting. My crowd was doing the things that are ugly about alcoholism or about alcohol in the beginning. And most of those guys did exactly that. The time came along, they did either quit drinking or cut down, manage their drinking. They settled down and did the things that people who settle down do. They set out with a life that didn't accommodate heavy, pathologic drinking. Mine became worse. My dependency became worse. And as that happens, alcohol does more and more to us, doesn't it? I begin to have those amnesia spells. I was blackouts. I didn't know I was having them. I'd just get a report on something that I didn't remember. And I would just assume that everybody was like that. The experts say differently. Now I did a few years ago, I talked at an Al-Anon convention in Georgia. And a lady came up to me after I spoke, and she said, I'm not an alcoholic, and I had those blackouts. And I didn't argue with her, and she probably is not an alcoholic and probably very much had blackouts. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I do say this. If you're just auditing this thing and thinking about whether you want to join up or not, if you're suffering from these amnesia spells when drinking, consider signing up, because it does seem like it happens more to us than it does people like her. And these things are getting out. Now, I had long since, a sign of alcoholism, a symptom of alcoholism is lack of control. The craving, this kind of thing. I would set out to drink this much, and I'd end up drinking that very early in my drinking. And then, not only could I not predict the amount I was going to drink or how drunk I was going to be, I could not predict my behavior in time. I could not predict what I was going to do. I could not predict my mood and what I was going to do, and my behavior became more and more antisocial, more unacceptable. And I got in more and more trouble. And I began to lose more and more relationships. And I began to do harm to people who were still there and still cared, people that should be dear to me. And so at times, I would know that this is bad. And there came those times when I would quit drinking. Make a resolve. I'm not going to drink anymore. This time I'm in enough trouble. This time I got sick enough. This time I did enough damage. This time there's too much mess to clean up. I'll never do this again. And then a week would go by, 2 weeks go by, one time a month went by. And I'd tell myself that lie that I had to tell myself, this time it's going to be different. This time I'll just drink at home. I'll just drink beer. I'll drink with a different crowd. I'll drink mixed drinks. Normal drinkers drink mixed drinks. And I'd begin to drink. And there were times when a six-pack at home would be okay, and it'd last a night or two or three or four. But it wouldn't last forever. And I'd go and I'd drink again. And I'd drink the way alcoholics drink, and damage would be done. And I got to that place where I just started drinking for oblivion. I got to that place where I just go closet myself off and drink. I just got to that place where all I wanted to do was just blot out the world. But I always come up for air. I'd get to that point where I just couldn't get another drink down. I'd get to that point where I had to get sober. And that, I don't know what made me think of this. I hadn't talked about this in a little while. I had to think about those beer ads where those people having such a good time, paying those pretty girls and good-looking guys playing tug-of-war on the beach and drinking Coors Light or something. That did not describe my beer drinking. Mine was coming to and finding that beer, maybe in the refrigerator if there was some there, and trying to get it to make those demons go away, getting as much down as I could, and that gag reflex would hit me and I'd blow it out my nose. You miss that, Those of you that are new and think you're not going to have any more fun, think about that. I've often thought on equal time that right after one of these commercials where those beautiful people are having such a good time, that they have one of those pretty girls blow one out her nose just to show there's another side. In the middle of the summer of 1966, I'm 28 years old. I've been working for this crooked company. I'd been up to St. Louis drunk for 2 weeks. I flew back, and Steve was reminding me how I had learned to taper off. And I know every time I come down here, I tell y'all again about tapering off. I self-detox. I know if you quit drinking abruptly, you're in trouble. You get the shakes and threaten to go into DTs and all kinds of bad stuff. So I would taper off. Had a little dosage problem tapering off. And Kay never could tell the difference in tapering off and drinking. It looks a lot alike. And I would explain to her, I quit drinking yesterday. Today I'm just tapering off. What would add to her confusion was I'd overdose tapering off. Get drunk again. Accidentally. Then have to start over. So from a 3-day drunk, I might taper off another 2 weeks. Long convalescence. So I was in that condition. I flew back in. I was in the airport lounge tapering off. She picked me up and brought me home. Made her stop and get some beer on the way home, I'm sure. She and the kids left. It's a hot July afternoon. I went to the phone book and I called Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't know what y'all were doing, but I knew about it. The man who brought Alcoholics Anonymous to my town, Greensboro, a man by the name of Bill Hunter, would call on my daddy. Usually at my mother's request, but he would come and see Daddy, and he left the book at one time. So I knew about Alcoholics. I knew this much. I knew it was about not drinking. I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and from a call to an answering service, at that time, AA just used an answering service, a man by the name of Bill Norman called me. And we began to talk. I found out he was about as narrow-minded about tapering off as Kay was. You're drinking, aren't you? Well, not really. I'm tapering off. Well, he didn't rush to my aid. But he said, call me when you're not drinking. Now, I don't know how you handle a 12-step call on any given situation. I'm just grateful as I can be that he handled that deal that way that day. And so I had his name and number. And when Kay got home, so I could, I didn't want to hear it, so I'd hush. I'd call the A&A here. I'd turn myself in. And this is the man. He and I agree, well, I'm not ready yet, but I'm going to call him when I am. And a particularly ugly time in our house, some month later, some 2 months later, some 3 months later, I don't know exactly when. It's a particularly ugly time in our home. Kay went to that safe place where that name and number was, and she called. And she reached this man. Now, she'd been doing things. She'd been reaching out. That we'd even gotten into some counseling with the minister of her church, the church she'd been a member of all her life. She'd been doing things. But this night, she'll say, if she were up here talking to us, she'll tell you that she called and got a strange man on the phone, a strange voice, a person she didn't know. And she began to tell him what was happening in our home. And she was talking to someone who not only understood, but who offered a solution. And what he said was, in so many words, I can't fix him. You can't fix him. But my wife goes to Al-Anon. And things are good with her when she goes. And so he put Liv on the phone, and Liv began to tell Kay about Al-Anon, and Kay started going to Al-Anon. And I'm not going to tell her story. I'll just say this. If you're drinking like I was, and your wife or a significant other starts going to Al-Anon, it won't cure your drinking. That's not what it's designed for, but it'll break your rhythm. I'll guarantee you that. What happened is my disease began to lose its power over her. That's what it was. Inch by inch, little by little. She got better. Now, I credit Al-Anon as much as anything with my getting to the door of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm going to get sober in the next 10 minutes. You shut up. I called him back. I called Bill. It'd been almost a year. 10 or 11 months. She looked at me and said, let's call Bill. I knew about Bill, and we called. Bill got on the phone, and he said, are you about ready to throw in the towel? Now, he knew about me. He knew about any alcoholic. But he certainly knew through Kay what was going on. He said, are you about ready to do something now? And I allowed that I was. And that's Saturday morning, June the 3rd, 1967. He came to my house, that little house I was about to lose. The payments were $100 a month. I couldn't pay him, and Cameron Brown Mortgage Company was going to sell it on the courthouse step. And a man came into my house who looked good, smelled good, and had all the qualities, at least that I could see, that I wanted. And he acted like I was the most important thing in the world. And got me to agree to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, meet him at a meeting that night. And I came to the Star Mountain Group on June the 3rd, 1967. I've been sober a day. If you know how it is to be sober a day, you know your attention span isn't exactly wonderful. But a guy got up and did what I'm doing tonight, and 2 miracles, clear miracles, happened that night, or 1,000 miracles that happened. The very fact I was upright and breathing in and out. But this night, 2 distinct things that I never fail to mention if I'm given this opportunity. Number one, I understood the speaker's message. I knew, couldn't have repeated a word he said 5 minutes after the meeting, but I knew what he was saying. I knew that he was telling us that he had drunk alcohol hopelessly, and that he'd come here, and he hadn't been drinking, and life was good. I understood that. And more important, the real hook was I believed him. Hadn't believed anything in a long time. Not really. Didn't even believe in God, I told myself. You know, I started going to meetings. At that time, there were 9 groups in Greensboro. Now there's 109, I guess. And there were 11 meetings. Central met 3 times a week, so there were 11 meetings. All but 2 were speaker meetings. So I went to these meetings. I didn't have a job. I'd been fired from the same place 4 times, and they were losing their sense of humor about it, their understanding. So I'd hang at the club all day, go to a meeting at night, except Sundays. So don't go to Sunday night. There are a couple of screwballs there that'll confuse you. You take Sunday off. I could not wait for Sunday night to sneak off. And the screwballs weren't hard to determine. One, I don't know where he is. One, not too long after that, came to a tragic end when he tried to kill his wife and did kill himself. So, dry without alcohol. And I began to explain agnosticism to the group. Turned it into a 3-screwball group. And that's when AA reached me about God and what we call spirituality. Because people in AA, not any that I know, don't argue about this. They just told me in the kindest way, you know, we don't have the luxury of choosing whether there's a God or not. We're going to die unless there's a God. Unless there's a God, we don't have a chance at all because we admit that we're hopeless. That's the first step. The first step is just an admission of hopeless. It's saying, I am hopeless. I am without hope of myself. I'm powerless over alcohol. Can't drink, can't not drink. And because of that, I cannot manage my own affairs. I cannot manage my own life. So if you're going to say there's no God, you might as well go someplace and shoot yourself. Because the next step bails us out. Because we can come to believe there's something greater, something more powerful, something else other than us that can do it because we can't. And I understood that. And as I said earlier, I had that gift of desire. That gift that made me sometimes just 1% in favor of not taking the drink over wanting that drink. And time accumulates, and things change. Been through all kinds of things, and I'm not going to take the time to, because we got some anniversary chips to give out, I'm not going to take the time to talk about everything, but tragedies have come, losses have come, pain has come in life like it does. Life can be a mighty uncomfortable at times, scary at times. Bill Wilson says that pain is the touchstone of spiritual growth. And what he's saying, his theory is, and I believe it, that unless I'm hurt, unless I'm afraid, unless something bad is happening, I'm not going to spiritually move to another plateau. And it seems to me that those things that have happened, that have been painful, that seem like a loss, seem like a tragedy, seem bad at the time, when I've looked back on them, I can be glad that most of them have happened because it put me in a better place. I ended up, after about 7.5 years of sobriety, I ended up working in the field. I'd had a little business of my own, had to close it because of recession at that time, and took a temporary job as an alcoholism information center and just stayed there for the rest, not at that particular place, but stayed in that field till I retired about 12 years ago. Now, one thing that happened to me, I was in AA and all that, but I just went to, just thousands of hours of schools and workshops. I became so smart about alcoholism, you couldn't believe it. I just knew everything. Now, I had a daughter who, when she was about 3.5 years old, because of my behavior and leaving the aspirin out in the bathroom, and she'd put anything in her mouth, she ate a bottle of aspirin and almost died. That's back when I was drinking. I remember standing by her bed when she was in a coma for several days. And the doctors were telling her, she may die, but if she doesn't die, she may lose all mental capacity. And when you don't have a God and you're in a situation like that, you're probably numb. So I just stood there numb day after day. And one day she came to. They were able to pull the tubes out of her ankles and all the things they were trying to flush her system when she came to and smiled, and we knew she was going to be all right. That little girl had a special place in my heart. She sat on my lap a lot, and we would do things. There was a president of our little girls club at one time and meet on our back porch. They let me be in it. The little neighborhood girls would come up once a week and sit on the back porch and do club things when they're about 7 years old or whatever, 8, 10. And with all my knowledge, if you come into my office, there's just all kinds of stuff. Frame binders, a college degree, and just certificates and licenses. And we know Kelly was distancing herself from us. We didn't hear from her. She's hard at the corner. And when we went to see her, she'd seem like looked like a prisoner of war. She was so thin and emaciated. And I tried to corner her and talk to her, and I said, something's wrong. Something's wrong. What's wrong? Oh, I'm okay. And so this expert on alcoholism and addiction just kept fretting about her and wondering about her. And our son, her brother, came to us and said, we got to find out about Kelly. Something's wrong. And he called her ex-husband. They hadn't been separated that long. And he said, what's wrong with Kelly? And I said, she's on cocaine. This genius about alcoholism had addiction and alcoholism right in his face with somebody that close, and I couldn't see it because it was so close. And so we did the thing that you do with sometimes when we think it will work. We set up a little intervention, and we did that, and Kelly went into treatment, and she came out of treatment and did a little experimentation. Hit another bottom, and now this December, she'll be sober, I think, 7 years without drugs. And now Kelly and I are closer than we've ever been. We had the best Thanksgiving we've ever had, I believe, in our memory, when all the kids and the grandkids were over. That little gal, that 50-year-old woman now that was so distant from us, calls her mother pretty frequently. And I hear the end of the conversation when Kay says, her mother says, I love you too. That painful time, that time that scared the boots off me, became a good thing. It brought us in a more real and loving family relationship that wouldn't have and couldn't have happened if it hadn't been for that pain. So there are many things that happen to us. The things that happen to us that seem to be bad at the time and seem to be scary at the time, the program has always sustained me. And I work closely with other people trying to stay in recovery, and I've seen the program sustain them through awfully tough situations. This program, this God we find here, doesn't let us down. You know, I was just talking to a man who calls me occasionally from over in Winston. He called me today. He had some problems on his mind, mostly family problems. And we were talking about when you stay in the solution. How many times have I worked real hard on a problem and made it worse? But when I do the solution, when I'm here with you and I'm doing those steps and I'm praying those prayers and I'm helping others and I'm doing the things that we call the program, the problems seem to take care of themselves. And for that, I'm as grateful as I can be. Thank you and happy birthday.